Greetings. So, we're going to look at one of Carl Sagan's books today, and I cannot tell you how much he has shaped my thinking on so many topics, and not just astronomical topics, but things pertaining to science and even the accelerating rate of change. As you can see in this video over here, I even cite one of his presentations from the Cosmos miniseries that was one of the earliest mainstream exposures to the accelerating rate of change, even though it was a very rudimentary and limited one. Now, one of his final books, which was released in 1995, was titled Demon Haunted World. And a major portion of this book was about how science sometimes tells people what the right answer for something is, but politics gets in the way, and politicization of a lot of things makes societies choose the wrong answer because the politicization is a higher priority than the correct answer that science tells them to give. Now, in the United States, both parties are equally guilty of anti-science behavior. Each party thinks the other one is, but both parties are equally prone to letting science take a backseat to when some political priority is at the forefront. And one paragraph from this book, which was Carl Sagan's second last book, effectively, one paragraph from this book has made the rounds on the internet in recent years because of how prescient it was for the state of the world that we are living in right now. Again, this book was released in 1995, so this paragraph that we're going to examine was written in 1994 or earlier. It might have been written several years earlier than that because a multi-book author like Carl Sagan might have various chapters and paragraphs that are floating around and then synthesized into individual books as some complete holistic picture emerges. So I'm going to read this paragraph that has been highlighted in pink over here, and I'm going to do my best Carl Sagan impression in doing so. When the United States is a service and information economy, when nearly all the manufacturing industries have slipped away to other countries, when awesome technological powers are in the hands of a very few, and no one representing the public interest can even grasp the issues, when people have lost the ability to set their own agendas or knowledgeably question those in authority, when, clutching our crystals nervously, consulting our horoscopes, our critical faculties in decline, unable to distinguish between what feels good and what is true, we slide, almost without noticing, back into superstition and darkness. The dumbing down of America is most evident in the slow decay of substantive content in the enormously influential media, the 30-second sound bites, now down to 10 seconds or less, lowest common denominator programming, credulous presentations on pseudoscience and superstition, but especially a kind of celebration of ignorance. So I hope that was a good impression of Carl Sagan. It would have done Johnny Carson proud. But consider what he's saying and when he's saying it. This is so precisely how things have unfolded that the incredible precision of this prophecy is just really, really telling. And he saw the early stages of this even at this time. Remember, this was even before the internet. And he saw the early stages of it because in his assessment, the incentive structures around government and the attention span of average people would lead to this state of affairs inevitably, irrespective of what types of technologies were available by the 2020s or whatever. The time frame for which he predicted this was the early, mid, and mid 21st century. And the fact that this is exactly what has occurred is rather dispiriting. Now, as a product of his time, in a pre-globalization world, he still thinks in terms of America only. Because while he does correctly say that manufacturing is something that will be offshored to other countries, and these countries can then hold us hostage because they control our manufacturing, ultimately, this is true of most Western countries. America cannot go down unless the entire Western world goes down with it. America will never underperform other Western countries. It's a question of whether other Western countries underperform a few powerful Eastern countries, of which only one is truly ascendant, which is China. And he did not specify China specifically in this passage or elsewhere in the book, as far as I can tell. And being a service and information economy is not a bad thing, of course. Carl Sagan became famous and wealthy because of a purely information-based product. And service and information ultimately is more dematerialized and therefore leads to greater wealth. But the critical choke points of any society will still be dependent on some aspect of manufacturing, which he correctly points out. If all of that is outsourced to another country, then we have ceded a lot of our power for an inopportune time when that country becomes powerful enough to make demands of us. Now, as far as the attention span of people, ultimately remember that for the vast majority of human existence, 99% of human existence, which we can see even in Carl Sagan's cosmic calendar, involved humans living in tribes of 50 to 100 people, and therefore conformity with the tribe is what ensured survival because one had to depend on others in their immediate tribe for survival. Only the very strongest and most resourceful people could be nonconformists with the tribe or leave and even create a new tribe of theirs, and therefore conformity with the prevailing opinion is hardwired into the mindset of all humans. I have a metric called jungle survivability, which is very accurate in predicting what a person's opinions will be even today. If you look at a person and you assess quickly how long this person could survive in the wilderness on their own, that is a good indicator of how willing they are to have their own opinions and how much they think the role of government in society should be versus how little they think the role of government in society should be. That jungle survivability concept is still valid to this day because, remember, our modern world of cities and international interconnectedness over the internet is very, very new, and the human brain has simply not caught up to all of this. Even despite the accelerating rate of evolution in the human brain, which I discuss in this video over here, it is in no way able to keep up with the rate of evolution of technology. And that is why you see things like cancel cultures and Twitter mobs, and how if you say something that is against the prevailing opinion at a particular moment, there will be a mob on Twitter demanding that you be prevented from earning a living or whatever. But the same people's opinion 3 days later could be something else. Now, as far as a solution to this problem, we get to the automation of government relative to the private sector. As the private sector gets more and more automated, it becomes more and more productive, and the productivity per capita of private sector workers exceeds that of government workers by such a huge margin that this becomes untenable in society because the government continues to collect more and more money through taxation, but it's delivering fewer and fewer services. As you see in this video that I have over here, I talk about the automation of jobs, but even the articles that discuss the automation of jobs only ever talk about the automation of private sector jobs, never the automation of government jobs, when in fact government jobs, at least at the mid-level, the bureaucratic level, should be just as suitable for automation, if not more so, particularly since automation doesn't care about language barriers and is not concerned about whether a job was in the private sector or the public sector. Now, in certain countries, this will happen more quickly, and those countries will have more efficient governments because the leadership of a country may decide that if the second-level leaders of government can get paid more by automating away all the lower levels of the bureaucracies, then they have an incentive to do so, and government services could become less expensive and fewer people working in government. Like, for example, if you want to do an LLC from Delaware, it is $300 a year and $50 in registered agent charges. Some people end up paying more. In California, it's $800 a year. Now, what do you get for $800 or even $300 in Delaware? You just get a tax ID number associated with that LLC that forces you to file a tax return so that you pay more taxes. The amount of service that you get is very little for the fee that you're paying. If you need to speak to a person, you may have to be on hold for an hour with Delaware or California just for this management of an LLC. Similar with the Department of Motor Vehicles. In California, if you want to get an annual license plate renewal, on average, it's maybe $300 a year. More expensive cars are more, some cars are less, but the average is around $300 a year. What do you get for $300 a year? You get a sticker that says you have paid this tax. Whatever service they provide to attach car ownership to driver's license and identity, it should be on a distributed ledger. There should be an artificial intelligence function associated with that, and the cost should be $2 a year. And since it's not practical to even collect $2 a year, the system designed to collect that would cost more than the $2 a year. It should be free. Same with the LLC. It should not be $300 to $800 a year. It should be $10 a year under a highly automated apples-to-apples comparison. Look at the things that the tech industry has delivered for free. Google Search is free. Netflix costs $9 a month. Yahoo Finance is free. Wikipedia is free. And yes, they take your data in all of these cases, but in terms of your first interaction with it, it is free. And the government also takes your data even though you're paying those fees for all of those services that I mentioned. So the tech industry has made all of these useful things free, but equivalent and even simpler things in the governance sector is more expensive. And therefore, the incorporation of automation and advanced data analytics into government decision-making is an extremely important aspect of the next 2 decades. In fact, it is the primary source of where the power of the nation state and the power of technological disruption, the atom, are going to clash with each other. In chapter 10 of my Atom publication, I provide a solution to some of this, how increasing automation of government services can, in fact, enable some of the cost savings to be passed to the taxpayer in the form of lower taxes, even as the safety net gets more robust, because we have a program under which central bank money printing has to be sent directly to people. Because this money printing has to be exponential anyway and has to be done to offset technological deflation, and you can read about that in this Atom playlist over here. However, I've only done the first 9 chapters of the Atom publication, and that playlist to date is not complete yet. But anyway, coming back to the primary quote from Carl Sagan, yes, it was very prescient, even almost 30 years on, and this prediction has made the rounds on the internet because of how precise it was. Note that he didn't necessarily say that prosperity is going down. He was too smart for that. He saw that there was an accelerating rate of change, and while he did not talk about economics in his books or his Cosmos television series, he was smart enough to recognize that that was still occurring because he was certain that we would eventually be traveling in space. However, this current phase of how dumbing down of content and decision-making using politics as a priority rather than science, and not just how political priorities would be in conflict with scientific priorities, but it becomes politically profitable to do exactly the opposite of what science says. And that's what we see in a lot of the political priorities of today. Now, as far as getting out of it, well, the automation solution that I described are the answer. And the United States will absolutely not be the first country to do any such automation of government functions at all. You'd have to look at a country like Estonia or Singapore or New Zealand or something like that to do a wholesale automation of government services. The United States absolutely, under no circumstances, will be one of the first countries to do it. It may, in fact, be one of the last. But anyway, I don't want this video to get too long, so if you like this type of content and are curious to see future content on topics like this, I encourage you to subscribe to this channel, and thank you very much for watching.